Fine. So let us go forward and look at the next part, that is identifying the elements with Selenium WebDriver. How Selenium works, how is it able to identify the various components on the page like links, buttons, text fields, radio buttons, checkboxes and all. Right. The answer to that is very simple. Selenium works on the page source. Okay. If you have any website, you can go to the page source of that website. Fine. In the page source, you have got tags and attributes and all. With on this page source, Selenium works and it identifies the elements. Okay. Now, let me explain you a little bit about page source. All right. In the page source, you have got tags and attributes. Okay. What do I mean by tags and attributes? For example, this is an anchor tag. Most of you will be knowing about it. Anchor tag represents a link. And every tag can have multiple attributes associated with it. This anchor tag has got PG, title, and another attribute known as href associated with it. So based on these tags and attributes, Selenium works. This is a div tag, and this div tag has got this class attribute. This h2 tag is inside this div tag and it has got this class. So there can be a tag name and there can be multiple attributes with that tag, or zero attributes as well. Okay, for example, this is a li tag which has got no attribute. Fine. Now how does Selenium work? Like how it identifies the elements on the basis of tags and attributes? Right. For understanding that, let me make a simple file. Okay, I'll make a new Excel file. Fine. And I'll just call it as identifying. Right. And let me open this. Okay. Now I will categorize the elements over here. I'll make a column known as element, and then after that the tag name associated with that element. Okay. And the attribute. Look, there are some attributes which are mandatory. All right. And there are some attributes which are optional. Fine, I'll tell you about mandatory and optional, right, attributes. Right. Okay, now what do I mean by this? Let me explain you this in detail. All right. Over here, we have got various types of elements on a web page. Okay, for example, what do you have? You have a button. Sometimes you have a text field. Right. You have a radio button, checkbox. Right. You have links. You have normal text on the web page. Right. Normal visible text. You have a drop down. Okay. You have images on a web page. Apart from this, there are other components like frames and tables. I'm not going to discuss those right now, but these are the most frequently used elements on the web page. Okay, right. Now every element over here has got a tag name, certain mandatory attributes which will always be present, and certain optional attributes which might not be present. Okay, or might be present. So the tag name for a button or something, how do you identify these elements? To identify the tag name and attributes and all, you first need to install a plugin inside Mozilla. That plugin is known as Firebug. Okay, open Mozilla and type Firebug Firefox. Okay, I'll talk about Chrome and IE as well. Okay, let me tell you about Firebug and Firefox, because you cannot just go to the page source every time to identify the elements on the page source. It's a little tough. Firebug will make your work easy. Fine. So you go to the first link over here. Make sure you open it in Firefox only. This is a plugin only for Firefox. Okay. And when you open it, just hold on. You will see a button. Right. You will see a button known as Add to Firefox. You click on it. It will be added as a plugin inside Firefox, so Firefox might restart. Okay, and you will see an icon over here. This icon is Firebug icon. If you have an older version of Firefox, you can scroll down, and depending on the older version, you can install this plugin. Okay, but with Selenium, if you're working, please make sure you're working with the latest Firefox. And when you open this Firebug, you click on this icon, you get a window like this. Okay, in the HTML tab, you will see the HTML page source, and you will also see a small arrow icon over here. Okay, if I click on this arrow icon and wherever I move my mouse, you will get the page source of that particular page. Right, for example, on the Gmail home page, okay, you have this Firebug, and wherever I move my mouse, okay, you get the page source of that particular area of the page. Okay, this is just like object spy, which is there in UFT. Okay, now this will make our work really easy. You can easily identify the elements. If you want to identify the elements in Chrome, okay, then in Chrome you can actually use Chrome Inspector. All right. For example, if I open this web page, right, and on this web page, suppose if I want to investigate this search box on the top. Oh, I've clicked on it. I'm sorry. Right. Just a minute. Let me open it again. Suppose I want to investigate this link, distribute. Right. In Chrome, the inspector is already inbuilt. Chrome Inspector. You just need to right click on this link and select the option Inspect, and Chrome Inspector will open up with the page source of that particular link highlighted. There is an arrow over here in Chrome Inspector as well. You can click on this arrow and move the mouse over any element, and you'll get the page source of that element. In IE, you have got IE developer tool. Okay, you go to any website in IE. For example, this website is loading. Over here, once this website is loaded, you can right click on any element. Okay, you will get various options over here, but you will not get the option to inspect the element like you do in Chrome. Rather, you will have to hit F12 of the keyboard, F12, and you will get this IE developer tool opening up. Fine, and you will have this arrow with which you can inspect the elements on the web page as well. Right, just keep it a little aside and you just move the mouse, you can do it. But we don't, we don't do like this. You just investigate it in Firefox, and you don't need to separately investigate the elements in other browsers, because the page source of the website remains the same across all the browsers. This page source will not change which you are investigating. This is the response from the server. This will not change. If you are identifying the element in Chrome or in IE or in Mozilla, wherever you go, you will get the same page source. So what we prefer in Selenium is that we identify it in Firebug with Mozilla, because it makes our work really easy. Fine, and we can implement that across different browsers. Alright, so you don't have to investigate the same element across different browsers. Alright, now if I talk about the Excel file which I had opened, right? If I talk about a button, in case of a button, if I investigate this next button which is there on Gmail, alright, and this next button has the tag name input. This is the input tag. Alright, and I'll just put the tag name as input over here. If I talk about a text field, fine, this is a text field. For a text field also, the tag name is input. Alright. From my experience, I know that for a radio button and checkbox also, the tag name is input. For all these 4 components on the web page, the tag name is same. But the mandatory attributes, they differ. Okay, in case of a button, fine, there will always be an attribute known as type equals to submit. You will always find it. Type equals to submit or type equals to button. Fine, you will always find this. So you have this. In case of a button, type is always equal to submit or button. You will always find this. For a text field, alright, if you have a text field, for example, this is an email text field, you will find the type as email, right? So generally the type is email, or you will find type equals to text. This attribute will always be there, type equals to email or a type equals to text. Fine. Okay, so the type attribute varies in case of a button text fields. In case of a radio button, you will always have an attribute known as type equals to radio. In case of a checkbox, you can check out any radio button on the web page. Okay, you will always find type equals to checkbox. These are the mandatory attributes which will always be present. In case of a link, most of you must be knowing, like for example, this is a link. In case of a link, the tag name is a anchor tag, and you will always find an attribute known as href hyperlink, which will point towards the URL which opens up when you click on the link. Okay, so in case of a link, the tag name is anchor tag a and the mandatory attribute is href. In case of a normal text of the web page, for example, this is a text, you cannot categorize it. There is no standard tag for it. Okay, sometimes the tag is div, sometimes it is span, sometimes h1, h2, right, or the para tag or h3 tag, whatever. There is no end to it. Okay, you can have any tag name for a text. In case of a drop down, all right, if you talk about drop down, this is a drop down, right? You will find that you will have a tag name like select. A select tag will always be there. It will have various option tags having the drop down values. All right. So there is a tag name select for a drop down. For a text and a drop down, there is no mandatory attribute. Okay, you will never find any mandatory attribute for a text or a drop down. It should be mandatory attribute. There is one mandatory attribute for every element if it is having, right? And for an image, if you talk about any image, for example, this is the image, right? Or hold on, this is coming from a div, right? Let me go to the website, say cnn.com. Okay, on this website, let me open Firebug. Just a minute. Yeah. If I look at the image over here, right? If I investigate this aeroplane, this fighter jet, right? So if I look at this image, it will be having a tag name known as img. Okay. For an image, the tag name is always img, and there is a mandatory attribute known as source, src, which points towards the URL from which the image is loading. It will always be there. If I copy this and if I paste the URL over here, I'll get the image. Okay, right. So these are the mandatory attributes with the various elements on the web page. And there are few optional attributes. Optional attributes like name, ID, class. These can be present with any element on the web page. If an element has got name, ID, or to some extent class as well, it becomes really easy to identify the element with the help of Selenium. Okay, it's easy to make scripts if an element is having a name, ID, or a class, but not every element on the web page would have it. Okay, only the major elements might have it. The developer might give it, so, or he might never give it. Okay, but these attributes and tags will always be there with the elements. So based on these things, we go forward and we identify the elements on the web page. You guys can also just go through w3schools.com and go through a 5 minutes HTML tutorial that can help you out. Okay, now how do we identify the elements with these? There's a very simple example for that. Okay, right. Let me make an Eclipse project. Okay, I'll make a new Java project, call it Selenium scripts, and I will include the jar files of Selenium inside it. Obviously, for every project you make, you will have to include the jar files of Selenium. Without including, you cannot work. Okay, so let me make a simple script over here. Let us start with a very simple example. A simple script which will take you to the home page of Gmail. Fine. And it will try to log you in by supplying the username or something. Okay, right. So it will go here and it will try to supply the user ID. Fine. So let us try to make that. Fine. Over here I will include the jar files. Hold on. The beta 3 version jar file, I'll include this, and all the other jar files I'll include. Okay, right. Now, just 1 minute. Right. So I'll make a new class over here known as Gmail. Fine. And we'll write the standard code. First, let us invoke Firefox. Okay. What I'll do is that I'll write over here Firefox driver equals to new Firefox driver. Okay, and I will import this class, right? And when you run this code, as I had stated earlier as well, you will get an exception. You need to set the system property webdriver.gecko.driver. So I'll set it webdriver.gecko.driver to the path of Gecko driver, that is fdrive. Just be with me. Yeah, it is present. Okay. So just being sure.exe. Fine. So you have to give the path of Gecko driver. Now Firefox will launch. You take the Firefox to the Gmail login page, that is http gmail.com. Mentioning the protocol is very important. If you don't mention the protocol and if you simply write gmail.com, it will not work. Okay, so if I run this, you will be taken to the home page of Gmail. But how do you identify the elements, right, on the home page? Right. So to do that, you will have to use Firebug. It's a text field. Right. Just hold on. This is a text field. You need to identify this text field. All right. So how do you do that? Why is it not taking? It just opened a blank browser and okay, I had deleted that HTTP, right? So you see that if you don't give the protocol, you'll get an exception, malformed URL. Okay, so you don't need to do that. So give a proper protocol. Fine. Okay, so if you run it now, it will launch the browser, it will take it to Gmail. Now, as far as the working of Selenium is concerned, as per Selenium, all the elements on the web page are known as web elements. Don't confuse this with the web element of QTP. Okay, see, Gmail has opened when I executed the script. Alright, now this text field is technically known as web element. Okay, this is a web element, this text field is a web element, this button is a web element. Everything in Selenium falls under the category of web element. Right. Every item on the web page is known as a web element. If you go to the official documentation of Selenium, which is seleniumhq.org, right, and if you have to actually open the documentation, just a minute, and you go to the download section, you go to the Java doc section, you will find a web element interface over here. Hold on, this is the one. Okay, this web element interface represents a generic HTML element. It can be a button, text field, anything. And it's got functions which you can perform on any element on the web page like clear, click, or get the location of the element, get the size of the element, get the text, whether it is disabled, enabled. So it's got various functions which you can fire on any element of a web page. Okay, right. And if you look at the WebDriver interface, you will always find a function known as find element. This find element function will find the first web element using the given method. Now what is this? Look, all our driver classes are implementing the interface web element. So in all the driver classes, you will have this find element function. I think from module 4 you are clear with the concept of interface in Java. Okay, so what you have to do is that you have to write over here driver. You will get the find element function. This find element function, and it finds the element based on the class by. There is an internal class by. The by class has got the mechanisms to locate the elements in a document. For example, by class name, by CSS selector, ID, link text, name, partial link text. So there are various things with which you can identify the elements on the web page. Okay, if I write over here driver.find element by dot, you will get the various locators or the locator strategies which you can apply to find an element on the web page. Okay, if I analyze the Gmail home page, okay, if I look at the text field, then in the text field you will find you have the attribute ID and you also have a name. So this text field has got ID, name. It will become really easy to identify it. Okay, so the ID is email. So if I write over here by the ID in the double quotes, you write email. This will go and find the email ID text field on the web page, and also the find element function returns you the reference of web element interface. Okay, this web element interface is representing a general HTML element. So you'll write over here web element, say email equals to this. Okay, you import the web element field, and what do you want to do this web element? What do you want to do with this web element? You want to type something. So you'll write over here email dot send keys, say hello. So the send keys function in the web element interface is used to simulate typing into an element. If you look at the documentation, right, the send keys function is used to simulate typing into the element which may set its value. Okay, so when you run this code, this will open the browser, fine, and take you to Gmail and type in hello inside the text field. Okay, but there are various questions which arise over here, that what if the ID of this element, there are multiple elements on the page with the ID email. Okay, see, it's typing. Right, now suppose there are multiple elements. One element is over here. This is one element with ID email. Suppose there is some other element over here which has also got ID email, and over here as well. There are multiple elements on the web page with the same ID. First of all, in web-based applications, this should not happen. You should contact the developer and tell him that don't give the same ID to different elements. Still, if you're not able to do it, and if multiple elements have the same ID, then you should know how Selenium works. Selenium extracts the objects on the page from the top left corner to the bottom right. It will scan the page like this. From left to right side, it will keep on scanning down. As soon as it finds the first element, suppose this is the first element, it will use it. Okay, right, it will find this first element with the driver.find element command. If you look at the documentation, that's what the documentation tells you, that find element function finds the first web element. Okay, so in our case, it will find the first web element and give it to us if multiple elements have the same ID. What if you want to get the second, third or fourth one? We'll talk about that later on. Okay, you can also do that. right? But if the simple command driver.find element gives you the first element. Alright, now what if the ID is varying? Sometimes there are applications, EXTJS application or something in which the complete ID is varying. Every time you run the application, the ID changes completely. So there are solutions to that as well. We'll talk about it. Okay, right. Now you can also click on the button, the next button, right? You can write driver.find element and you can get the ID of the next button. The next button over here has the ID next. It's also got a name which is sign in. Let's take the name this time. Okay, so I'll write over here driver.find element by the name sign in. Okay, so this will give you the reference of the button, next button. Okay, what do you want to do with it? You want to click on it. Okay, so on the web element you can click as well, and when you run this code, this web element is very different from web element of UFT. That is completely different, so don't confuse it with UFT. Okay, so when you run this code, it will type into the text field and click on the next button. You see that? Right. Now you can also write the complete thing in one line as well. Look, to interact with one element, you are writing 2 lines of code. Okay, you can simply write one line. You can write driver.find element by the ID email dot send keys something. The execution starts from the left side. First, this part will be executed. Web element would be extracted, and on that web element, send keys function will be fired. Similarly, you can write this thing as well. Dot click. So first, the web element, this extraction happens. The element is extracted, and then you click on it. Now, what if the element is not found with this ID or name? Then you will get element not found exception. If I give an ID which is not existing, then you will obviously get an exception. Alright, but we'll talk about all those things. Right, now one thing is there, you can import the documentation. You see that? I get an exception, no such element exception. Right, okay. Now the documentation of Selenium, we were importing it again and again from we were looking on the website, right? seleniumhq.org for the documentation. You can actually import the documentation inside Eclipse. Okay, you click on this Java doc link and you will get this URL. Okay, you copy this URL, fine, and you go to the project. Fine, this is the project, right? You right click on the project, go to the properties, fine, and go to the libraries tab. You will see that you will have the main jar file for Selenium, which is this one. Okay, client combined 3.0 beta 3. Okay, expand it and you will see the Java doc location over here. Okay, double click on this and paste the path of the Java docs. Okay, right, and remove index.html from the end. Please remove this. Right, click on validate. You will get the message location is likely valid. Right, so that is fine. You click on OK, you click on OK, you click on OK. That's it. Okay, now if I say if in my program, if I move my mouse over Firefox driver, you will get the description what Firefox driver does. Or if I write driver dot, you get various functions. You click on the function and you will get the description what each and every function is doing. Okay, so you don't have to run here and there to open Java docs. If you click on the link anywhere in the description, then the Java doc URL will open within Eclipse. Okay, you just have to switch over to this frames view on the top, this frames view, right, and this Java doc will open up. So we will be using this in the entire training. We will not be jumping back and forth between on the website. You can import the Java docs in Eclipse. Right. Now, the next thing, you have seen how to identify the element with ID, with name. What if the element is not having any ID or name? For example, this is a text on the top, one account, all of Google. If I try to identify this text is between h1 tag. This tag has got no class, no ID, no name, nothing. So over here you have to use XPaths, or over here you'll have to use CSS selectors. So this element over here has got no ID, no name, no class. So what do you do over here? You will have to use CSS selector over here, or you'll have to use the concept of XPaths, because every element cannot have an ID or a name every time. So let us go to the next topic, that is, let's study XPath, that what XPaths are and how do you